Good evening and welcome to another edition of Inside the Issues. Inside the Issues produced by the League of Women Voters, Richfield, and my name is Maureen Scalia and I'm the moderator for the program. Tonight we're going to talk about bicycling, which has really hit the metro area in a big way. I think we are one of the top cities in the country now in terms of the amount of people biking. And I have two guests here, kind of representing each spectrum on the age or the range of age of bicyclists. On my immediate left is Dave Gettner. Dave has been involved in Richfield civic activities for quite some time. You're currently on the HRA.
I am.
And was chair of the task force that put together the master bike plan for Richfield. And then on my far left is Sean O'Leary, who is representing the young bicyclists in Richfield. And Sean, you're also active in the city. You're on the planning commission, and you're active with the bicycling group too.
Yep.
Welcome and thanks so much for being with us. Dave, tell us a little bit about yourself. What occupies your time these days?
Well, you already made the point, Maureen, that I'm an old guy.
Sorry about that, but you do represent that age group.
To some extent, I'm kind of proud of that. I use biking as a way of fighting the aging process.
Oh,
If I can bike with younger people that go fast, I have a more youthful outlook if I can keep up with them.
Yeah.
I like biking because it's an exercise that provides euphoria, and the more I bike, the more I can eat, and that's
true.
One of life's enjoyments.
Yep. And you've been on various. I know you were on the Transportation Commission for a while.
I wasn't, but I've gone to some of their meetings and tried to influence them when they had issues that I had an interest in.
Okay. I knew I saw you there, so that's why. So you weren't on the commission, you just came and advocated for bicycling. Okay. Sean, tell us a little about yourself.
Well, right now I work as a web developer and I'm a planning student at the University of Minnesota. I moved to Richfield in 2012, and before that I lived in Northfield. And I think what really got me interested in bicycling, I lived in an area of Northfield on the edge of town, quite different from Richfield. There weren't a lot of things to bike to, or to walk to.
Yeah.
And there was no transit service like we have in Richfield. So bicycling, until you're old enough to get a driver's license, is really your only mode of transportation. So learning how to do that gave me a feeling of independence, got me really healthier as a teenager, and yeah, I still enjoy that freedom now.
Yep. And you still bike around, maybe to the U once in a while?
Yeah, especially last fall, I was doing pretty regular commutes to the U.
Yeah, yeah. Well, bicycling, as I mentioned, has seemed to have really become much more popular than, I don't know, when I was younger. The cities seem to be developed for cars, but there's more demand. Just talk about the Twin Cities in general. What has happened in the last few years? You might want to start.
I think by virtue of the fact that we're Minnesotans, and at one time, and it's probably still true, that Minnesotans bike and recreate at twice the national average. And I'm not sure why that is, but it seems that there's a reverence for exercise in our state. And bicycling, as Sean pointed out, is a way of getting around, of independence, of self-locomotion. It's a quiet way of transportation. And in that manner, I believe it has a lot of interest to Minnesotans who want to get out and see our state and recreate.
Anything to add?
Yeah, well, I think we can probably get into this more later. We talk about bicyclists in a few different categories of the strong but fearless, which is like 10% of anybody who's going to ride a bike, and the big proportion is the interested but concerned. And I think the cool thing is we started to get into a really positive cycle. We're making more and more places where those interested people can start to bike, and people are able to use those for transportation. A lot of people are just doing it to bike to the lake and to do it recreationally. But people who are at least some of the time going to the coffee shop and other things and starting to experiment with adding bicycling into their life.
Yeah, you see bicycle racks around eating places now, especially in the Minneapolis area where there's not so much. I mean, you got to walk blocks to, after you park your car to get to the restaurant, and obviously bikes get much closer.
Yep.
Have you noticed this also developing?
The bike racks are often mandatory. If you're a new development or you're doing a major remodel, most municipalities require that you put in some type of bike facility in the form of a bike rack.
Well, that's positive.
Yeah,
Very positive.
So it's the build it and they will come theory.
Yeah. I know at the university where I worked for 40 years, there were an incredible number of bikes all over the place. And then the new one where you can pick up a bike at a rack, pay some money, or have a membership, and then you can take it somewhere, leave it there, lock it up again, and then somebody else could use that bike to go someplace else. What is that called? I forget that now.
Nice ride.
Nice ride, yeah. And that's going strong in Minneapolis, I believe.
Very, very much so, to the point that they're expanding their operation.
Oh, really?
They've expanded it to St. Paul. They've put some, they're trying to do some things for areas of the community that need it. They're into North Minneapolis. As you know, Richfield is the Metro's first suburb, and it should have been the first place that they expanded Nice Ride to outside of the core cities, but instead they went to Rochester.
Oh, they went to Rochester. Is there any talk of expanding that program?
They need and want areas that have high density.
Oh, okay.
And that have attractions, and they don't realize all the good things that Richfield has to offer.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, I think because we're on the way to so many places, like the mall and Southdale.
I think, one of the issues is that we've got a lot of destinations. It is focused on really shorter trips, although you're allowed to take it a longer distance. Most people are just going a couple of miles. I think we'll be in a much better position in 5 years when we have more of an infrastructure of safe bicycling things in place. But, the other issue is they have expanded into St. Paul. It hasn't been nearly as popular as Minneapolis so far. So right now they're seeing that just the major areas where it's really, really, no doubt working well is around the university, around the downtown. So probably going to continue to see filling in of those areas before they start to go out.
And the Met Council been supportive of it too, in the sense that you can ride your bike to a bus stop and put your bike on a bus.
Yep,
and then take the bus and then get off and ride.
Yep, and I think it's somewhat unusual for metro areas that every single bus in our system has a bike rack on the front of the bus. They've made some advances. They're doing a bus rapid transit on Cedar Avenue in Apple Valley, and they're going to be doing it in Richfield on 35W. And those are actually now racks inside the vehicles themselves, so you don't even have to go through the intimidation of putting it on the front. So yeah, it is very nice that we have bike-friendly buses.
Yeah, that was good.
And you can look forward to the 38th Street bike station. So 38th and Hiawatha, where the light rail is, where there's cross Minneapolis bus routes. They're going to put up a facility. It'll have room, I believe, for 54 bikes.
Kind of like the bike garage idea at the U.
Yep. And you take your transit card to get in the door, and you hang your bike up there. You'll probably want to lock it. You climb on your bus. Or the light rail, and go about your day's activities, and at the end of the day you come back and retrieve it.
Oh, that's amazing. So we have bike riders who are commuters, bike riders for recreational use. The Twin Cities have any bike races also?
The formerly named Nature Valley professional bike racers were here. It now went to Great River Energy, and I don't think they're sponsoring it this year. But there's a week in June of professional, world-class bike racers that come to the Twin Cities.
Oh, really? Where do they ride?
Or
they just meet and kind of...
No, they have a week worth of venues. The women meet on a Wednesday in a closed circuit in downtown St. Paul. On Thursday, I don't remember where they are. On Friday, they in the past have been in Uptown, again on a closed circuit. I think on Thursday, where I didn't remember, they go out into the countryside and do a longer ride. On Sunday, the grand finale is that they bike up and down the hills of Stillwater.
Oh, that's an endurance.
So
Exercise.
it's an impressive event. It's something that the area can be proud of, that all those folks come here to bike.
Yeah.
And you'll have to come and watch it this
I
year.
guess I will. I forgot. I didn't realize that it was world class and it came to the cities every year. Then there's also the dirt bike. Is that how they refer to themselves? That I know are agitating or advocating, I should say, either way, for more trails that they can have in the state parks and forests and national forests, maybe up north especially. Is that
I'd call them off-road bikers.
off-road? That was the term I was looking for.
Some people call them mountain bike riders, but we don't have a whole lot of mountains here.
We got dirt.
Yeah, they play they're a portion of the bicyclist,
Okay.
and that form of bicycling has improved a lot over the years. Those folks are energetic enough and ambitious enough and willing to make their own courses, and they used to go up and down, which made them more of an aerobic workout. Now, when they build a off-road bike course, they follow the contour of the land. In that manner, the route isn't as strenuous. It's more bike control, and more importantly, not going up and down. It eliminates the erosion problems.
Yes. Yeah, it's more environmental friendly on that.
Exactly.
Okay. And so I think I've covered all of them. And of course, there's one more, the youth ones, where there's certain parks where they've got things and they do these kind of like snowboarding, except it's on bikes. There's a group doing that too, isn't there? Or are they just little kids doing those, taking their little
Sort of
dirt bikes?
BMX bikes, or
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
I'm not sure if some of them may use the skateboard park. I'm not very familiar
Okay.
with that.
Then we don't have anything for them.
Yeah, it's not necessarily little kids, but the park in Richfield that's by Augsburg Library
Yeah.
has what Sean referred to as the BMX bikers. These are small bikes. I think they're 24-inch tires, so that the youth doesn't fall as far. But they do tricks.
Tricks, that's it. Yeah, they're
Yep.
some of them get almost acrobatic on them.
Yeah.
And so Richfield does have a
And
park.
and and if they want to take a step up from the Richfield Park, which is very nice for the younger beginner BMX bicyclists, they can go over to the area next to the South Del Y,
That's it.
where they have an even more impressive facility that Bloomington, Richfield, and Edina funded and operate in conjunction, and the Y is there to man it.
Yeah, that's the one I was thinking of, the one over on Adams Hill or
Yep.
or near there. So Richfield, in terms of the park, has done some things, especially for, like you said, BMX biking. But Richfield was laid out as a first-ring suburb in a time when cars were becoming available to anybody. And though they didn't think about bikes at all on the streets, did they?
It seems like they didn't. I mean, you can still ride a bike on the street. Sean will probably talk about sidewalks
Yeah.
that the city didn't put in. And let's give him a chance to do that before he...
Yeah, I mean, I think you almost want to look at two different categories, and one is the general layout of our community, which is pretty conducive to bicycling, in that we've got a nice grid of streets. We don't just have cul-de-sacs and lots of dead ends, lots of alternatives to create back bike routes. And then there's the design of the streets themselves. So I think we did great in the layout of our community. We're relatively dense. We've got a lot of interconnectivity. The layout of the streets is not so great, and that's something that we're starting to correct now. Part of that issue is not nearly enough sidewalks, in my opinion. But of course, for bicyclists, it's not having enough bike lanes, not having enough trails, and so on.
And I know the Transportation Commission started looking at that seriously when we knew that we had to redo quite a bit of few of our arterials. And so we came up with complete streets. One of you want to talk about that in terms of how it relates to bikes?
Sure. So, I mean, complete streets are really just designing a street with the specific intention that it works well for all users. So, for our purposes, that means motorists, just like it always has, but it also means bicyclists, it means pedestrians, and it means transit users. So, if you think of the original street that we had that was totally standard in Nicollet and Penn and so on, we had 4 lanes, 4 wide lanes for cars, and then we had narrow sidewalks, and everybody else was just sort of not left out of the picture, basically. So the idea is rebalancing that, so we have space for bicyclists, so that there are safe options for people going along the street and then going across the street as well.
Yeah. And, that may be a kind of an asphalt trail type thing.
Yep. So,
Or it can be an actual lane. And actually, we're really serving 2 different groups of bikers with that, right? The commuter bikes more.
yep, and I think I think 76th Street was the first example where they did that. They did the on-street lane, which is intended for the faster bicyclist and probably more the commuter type. And then you have the off-street trail, that asphalt 8-foot to 10-foot trail, and that's more flexibility. It might just be a pedestrian, it might be a jogger, or it might be a slower bicyclist, like a child with a parent or something like that.
Yeah. And that was a good deal. You want to talk about complete streets? Add anything more to it?
The 76th Street across Richfield was a bonus.
Oh, talk about that one, yeah.
Okay.
How did that come about?
Well, it came up because of the affluence of Edina, created excess affluence that necessitated that a new sewer line be put in across Richfield.
That's right.
So it was Metro Council, who was in charge of our sewage, came in and dug up the old streets. 75th Street on the west side of Richfield, 76th Street on the east side. And when they reconstructed the street, they did it in a manner that provided a bike facility and provided a trail on the north that Three Rivers lays claim to.
Oh, okay. So the street work was done by the Met Council, and then the trail, the asphalt trail that goes along 76th on the west of 35 and east of, along 76 east of 35 and along 75th west of 35. That was all paid for by
No.
Three Rivers? Or?
No, Metro Council paid for that as well,
Okay.
but Three Rivers took credit for it.
Took credit for it.
Yeah, you probably know that we as suburban taxpayers pay money to Three Rivers, and most of their facilities are in the outlying areas, some even beyond Hennepin County.
Yeah.
Three Rivers is the former Hennepin County Regional Park Authority, and so for some number of years, those of us who feel that we were being taxed and not represented, instead of having a tea party, said, can't you do something for us? And they finally did. So that trail through Richfield will connect through Edina along 9 Mile Creek to connect to Hopkins, where there's a series of trails. To the east of Richfield, there's a north-south trail that's also a Three River facility going from Lake Nokomis all the way through eastern Richfield across 494 on a new bridge that they built at 12th Avenue into Bloomington that'll eventually cross the Minnesota River on the restored Long Meadow Bridge.
Is that the old kind of cedar bridge?
That's the old cedar bridge that's been closed now for 17 and a half years to
But
bicyclists.
Are going to take over that bridge.
Well,
Or runners, or hikers too, I suppose, will be using.
But the shortcoming is that as a bicyclist, we had to stop at the river's edge and only look across.
Until that bridge opens again.
Yes.
Is there any place where 46th Street you can bike across and Lake Street?
Getting across the Minnesota River has been a big barrier, and I think a real issue going south from here. The only legal place near Richfield is the 494 bridge into Egan, and they've got a trail separated from the roadway on the south side. It's not a very nice crossing. I will say it's very noisy and unpleasant. The closest one beyond that is the Bloomington Ferry Bridge, which is 17 miles away from that. So it's a significant distance right now. So we're going to be closing that with the Cedar Bridge, and in 2020 we'll get a new Minnesota River Bridge, which will also have a trail.
Oh, good. Good. And the Mississippi has more, though. I mean, you're going to be on with traffic, like 46th and Franklin, probably, and Lake Street, but at least you can get across.
Yep. quite a bit more options there.
And then up north, probably too, there's more that cross.
Yeah.
It's part of the Three Rivers Park in Mississippi. I think National Waterway too. There's probably trails up in that area. Yeah. So when that on the east side of Richfield, that's done, then people will be able to get into the whole chain of lakes and
That's right.
Minnehaha Creek
Yep.
Yep.
and bike that whole area.
Yeah, and it's already, I mean, there's a short gap, but it is generally done right now, and I think we're already seeing a lot of people. I saw people last summer when they were still constructing the trail. They still had cones up, and you had to hop a curb because they hadn't put in a curb ramp, and families were already out on the trail and using it, so it's already a pretty popular attraction.
Okay. So, along with the complete streets, at about the same time we started talking about that, there started really being a movement to encourage and include bike riding in terms of planning in the city. And you want to talk about how that whole task force came about? One of you maybe, Dave?
The suburban communities, all built up like Richfield, had some challenges to be able to provide facilities for bikers to get around. The city got a grant to hire a consultant to help facilitate that. It was an acronym that I don't remember that you can help me on that provided the grant. Okay, it'll come to me. This is the old deal. What was done is they looked at all the locations that people might want to bike to, the schools, the libraries, the parks, and developed routes that would get to them. It was unfortunate that for years and years, most cities were very parochial in how they looked at biking, and they didn't consider how to get from one community to another. Yeah. So that this bridged that gap as well. It looked for ways, and it was a challenge to get across the crosstown, to get across 494, even to get into Edina.
France was not friendly,
yeah,
or 66th Street.
Yeah. So and Richfield, we should point out, has some major challenges for bicyclists, in that there's only two ways to get across the city on a bicyclist. You either go on 66th Street, or you go on 76th Street. And other than that, a bike bridge over 35W, where you have to carry your bike up the stairs to get over. So it's a challenged community, bike-wise. So that too was one of the reasons for, how can we make this a more bike-friendly community? And they did very well at that.
Yeah, and I was not on the task force. I actually came to town just as that plan was being finalized, so I can't speak to a lot. But I will say the worksheet that we have of the destination areas and the sort of level of attractiveness that, say, a school has versus a library versus a shopping area is actually used as a template by other communities in terms of how to plan where bike facilities go. One other important thing to note is that although we had a plan of what to do, we didn't have, and still don't have, specific funding to go out and build every bike lane tomorrow. So it's really about setting up a framework of when it comes time to redo these streets, how do we behave, and where are we going to put the bikeways.
Is that being, we're going to talk about 66th Street, obviously. That's a huge construction project and lots of changes. And we'll talk about what it means for bicyclists. But are they looking at some of those other routes which go through some residential areas? When they redo those streets, the residential streets, which is ongoing. I know mine area was done last summer, and I think it's a 5-year plan to do all of them. Will there be signage and stuff along those particular, I think like Humboldt or Girard is one that kind of goes
so
west of...
those sort of neighborhood greenways or neighborhood bike boulevards, the intention is as we do that residential repaving that those start to happen. That said, there wasn't funding immediately set aside, but it's quite cheap to do because it really is just paint in most cases. So we will probably see those. I think the first one is supposed to go in this year as long as we get money lined up to do it. And that won't be any sort of exclusive bike space like a bike lane, but it'd be a bike boulevard or signage indicating a good route for bicyclists.
For safer route.
Yep, exactly.
For people to use. And then I know there was a lot of controversy. They wanted to put it down Oliver, I believe, and that kind of got, it went by the wayside because the public got very upset about bicyclists going through their neighborhood. I mean, to me, bicyclists seem to be pretty safe people to associate with and have it going down my street.
That was an unfortunate circumstance.
Yeah.
The city got a grant, a federal grant, to be able to put a bike boulevard on Oliver, which is a perfect north-south route. It takes people north from the Best Buy corporate campus, brings them up close to Penn Avenue, which is a route that will allow them to then go north through Minneapolis. It was a grant that the city made an application for sort of at the 11th hour, to the point that there wasn't any public input or public discussion, and there wasn't any assurance that they'd be the recipient of the request. They got the request, and this was a program that got money for other bike projects throughout the metro. They held a ceremony in Richfield on Oliver, and made the announcement that this was going to happen. And we're a society that has a problem with change, and this came all of a sudden, out of the blue, and people drew their line in the sand. And that's been an attitude that has prevailed for all biking facilities. The NIMBA thing, not in my backyard, and I've been waving the biking flag for a long time, and it's an easier sell now, so that people are more accepting. I think if that situation would have occurred today, instead of about 10 years ago, that the reaction would have been different and it would have been welcomed.
So did we lose the funding?
We did lose that funding, and there was two projects. There was one on Bloomington Avenue in East Richfield, and there was that one on Oliver, and because of that and the delay that public input creates, and the delay that makes things cost more, they were only able to do the project on the east side of Richfield on Bloomington Avenue.
And that brings up something that I think is happening. I think as Richfield kind of starts turning over and newer families move in, I think they're going to be more interested in things like bike routes and whatnot. Is that your kind of feeling as you, especially on social media and listen to people?
It depends so much. There are a lot of older people who maybe aren't going to bike themselves, but are very accepting of it. I think in particular because they want to see young families coming into the community and they know that these are attractive. As a general rule, probably younger people are going to be more comfortable with that. But it's understandable. People have been there for a very long time. They hear of something new that happened without their knowing, and they're not really familiar with it, and they're going to have a problem with it potentially. I think Dave's absolutely right that I think if that would happen today, we would see a different result. Richfield has become more accepting, and that kind of bike facility, bike way, has just become a lot more common.
I know it was kind of like a hidden secret. I live not very far from Upton Avenue, but apparently for a number of years there was a whole bunch of people that would go down Upton Avenue to get to work at a bike manufacturing plant or something like that.
Quality bicycle products in Bloomington.
Yes, and there was a whole bunch of them that had been using Upton Avenue for quite some time, and they were so quiet, no one ever knew about them.
And they were using Upton Avenue because it was your street, but also because there was a stop-and-go light at 66 that will get them across that busy roadway. There's also a stop-and-go light at 76th, and then it's a close hop to get across the Xerxes Bridge.
Xerxes Bridge is what they were using.
And you should follow them someday down to Quality Bicycle Products. We can be proud that in Bloomington, our southern neighbor is the world's largest distributor of bike parts.
Oh, I did not realize. I mean, I knew there was a company that either made bikes or made parts, but I didn't know that they were, wow. It's right, and real close to the border too then, or not very far.
It's at the south end of Highland Park.
Oh, down there,
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, on 106th.
Okay, so they travel quite far, some of
Yeah.
them.
And because they're incentivized to bike to work.
Oh.
You know, they work for a bike facility. There are a lot of bikers that work there because, you know, that's their interest and their heart is in it. But more importantly, that firm gives the people who pedal $3 a day to bike to work. You know, by having
100 times 200 or
Yeah.
250, I forget how many work days in a year. That's a bit of a chunk of money.
and by offering that incentive, they can don't have to build as many parking spots, which are very expensive. They have a healthier workforce. They have people that are coming in that have burned off all their aggravation and stress from home, so they're ready to go to work and work harder. So you know it makes a lot of sense, and you know you should be out there waving, and maybe a lemonade stand is in order.
For them on the way through. Well, that's wonderful. Well, let's talk a little bit more about biking in Richfield. And I know the master bike plan, in addition to talking about the routes and where they should go and planning for the future and all that, talk about at least the 3 E's in the plan itself: educate, advocate, no, encourage. Educate, encourage, and enforce. Talk a little bit about the education piece. What can we do to educate people?
So a lot of what we've done for education as a group has been through classes. I did, for example, a presentation with the senior bikers, just an hour-long presentation about bike traffic safety. I'm a league cycling instructor along with Jan Matthews, another member of our group. So we've been certified to teach these classes. We do a few different forms, but no matter what, you're getting people to somehow sign up and agree to go to a class, which can be a little bit of a barrier. But that ranges from a couple hours, which is bike basics, where people are just learning the basics of traffic law, how to behave, and then traffic skills 101, which doesn't sound like it'd be a lot more, but it's actually an 11-hour class over 2 days.
Wow.
So you do all that traffic knowledge, and then you also get quite a bit of practice sort of behind the wheel in a parking lot where you're learning to control your bike better. And we'll oftentimes get people who have, you know, they can ride upright on a bike, that's fine, they're not going to fall over, but they really don't have the sort of level of control that they need to feel comfortable in traffic. That means starting and stopping without waving around, being able to shift comfortably, being able to look over their shoulder for vehicles that are approaching. So getting and developing those skills are really important to make people feel really comfortable and solid in traffic.
And do you also, I mean, as a process of that, you're also encouraging people to take it up as a form of exercise and enjoyment, and the old endorphins that come off of it too. And that's a part of it too. Do you reach out to the schools at all? And
you know, Jan's done a little bit with the schools. I have not personally. I think when you think about encouragement, I wouldn't necessarily lump that together. I think of that more things like open streets, which Dave can certainly talk about. Other things like even just having a bike rack at the destination where you're going to go. Reasons why you would want to get on your bike.
okay.
But educating the youth is important. There's been a couple generations of kids that weren't as bike oriented as
Right.
I was because of our car culture.
Yes, parents driving them everywhere.
So the Bicycle Alliance of Minnesota has a program where they'll come in and teach teachers how to teach biking to students. I think it's 4th and 5th graders.
Yeah.
And they bring in bikes and have a criteria and they have all the instructional material for them, and this allows the younger person to become more comfortable and familiar with the bike, and more importantly with some of the safety aspects and some of the rules of the road, if you will. And so, you know, that's important. You know, the school districts have a challenge in educating students with the normal classes, so that sometimes the idea of having a bicycle curriculum
They need to learn how to.
It's secondary to
Yeah.
to the other forms of education.
Well, and also, I mean, as long as we're talking about safety a little bit, there's the whole problem of automobile drivers and bicycle drivers, and I don't think the automobile drivers know enough about the bicycles, and sometimes the bicycles kind of forget about the cars, and the cars can't stop as fast as they can, type of thing. How do we handle that, and what are you guys doing?
Well, unfortunately for motorists, there are only a couple opportunities where you really have to reach them with an educational curriculum, because you get your license when you're 16 and then you're done, more or less. So you do have, AARP has a program that does involve, is mainly just how to stay safe as a senior citizen behind the wheel, and that does involve a little bit with bicycles, so it's one opportunity to reach them for those who choose to take that. And then there's also improving the driver's manual for teenagers who are learning to drive a car. And that's more of a state advocacy effort, but Bike Alliance has done that, so we're clarifying some things, and people don't get their driver's license with misconceptions about what's appropriate for bicyclists to do.
Yeah, I know in talking to a lot of my friends, the whole thing is you've got a street with a bike lane. There's not a bike there, so you stop, maybe there's a stoplight, but you want to make a right-hand turn, and you don't know. You worry a lot about that bicyclist coming up on the bike lane, and you not seeing it at the last minute as you begin.
Yeah, and that's a good example of where there are sort of issues from both sides. When we're teaching bicyclist safety, we want them to be very careful of what we call the right hook, which is a motorist turning in front of you. So that means, if you're seeing a motorist that's obviously turning right, you don't want to be overtaking them on the right. That's a dangerous situation to avoid. But for drivers also, they think, well, I can't drive in the bike lane, so I should stay all the way over until the last minute, and then I'll dive to the right. And that's really counterproductive. State law actually requires you to merge into the bike lane first, so you're up against the curb. And that way it's very obvious to a bicycle what you're going to do.
I've always wondered about that. Now I know. I can, at the intersection, I can move into the bike lane, and therefore there's no doubt about what my intentions are, and a bike shouldn't try to sneak along the side.
And you'll notice too that there are that white line turns to dashes,
right.
which means it's okay to cross it.
So wherever there's a white dash on the, I guess it would be the outside with the curb being on the inside, then you can safely move in. And probably on a residential street going off a main arterial, you can also cross over if you want to turn on that residential street.
Yep, that's right.
Cross the solid white line. Oh, okay, that's good. And then also, motor vehicles should really brush up on their hand signaling, right?
Yeah,
I know.
That's a good point.
I always have to stop and think, he's signaling, now is it right or left? And how do bicycles make left-hand turns when their bike lane is on the right? What's the same?
So, well, and this is changing a little bit as we're getting facilities for, again, that sort of interested but concerned. But the traditional way, if you've got just a regular painted bike lane, is it's just like a car and you're in the far right lane. So you're going to look behind you, you're going to signal to the left, you're going to move across, get over into that left turn lane and make the left turn.
Okay.
But that's not true everywhere, and it won't necessarily be true in all of 66th Street. They have bike boxes that allow bicyclists to avoid that, because especially when it's a busy street, it can be pretty intimidating to have to get across, 2 rows of 35-mile-an-hour traffic. So the alternative way is you do it more like you're crossing as a pedestrian. You'll go through the intersection, you'll stop, and then you wait for the light to change, and then you'll go the other leg.
Okay.
So,
kind of an area of refuge is what I call it.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's talk about also 66th Street. Now, I've seen and I think I know what's happening, but maybe one or both of you can tell me exactly what's happening 66th Street east of Nicollet and then west of 35 and then what's in between.
Yeah. Well,
in terms of whether it's bike lane and isn't a bike lane and whether there's a asphalt pathway and isn't.
So yeah, we were, our goal as a group was to see what's called a cycle track, which is basically a one-way bike path that's a little bit more separated from traffic than a bike lane. Our goal was to see that across the whole project from Cedar Avenue to Xerxes Avenue. We didn't get that, but we got pretty close. And we got Penn Avenue basically to Cedar Avenue, this kind of bike lane. So the benefit of this is like a trail, it gives people a little bit more separation from traffic. A lot of people aren't comfortable even when there is a bike lane and riding in a really busy street, so they've actually got an area of grass and trees that separates them from the street. But it's a one-way facility, so it's much safer. You're much less likely to have crashes that can occur on those two-way trails.
Oh, so one side is going to be one direction,
Yep.
like south, for example, will go one way,
Yep.
and then the north side will go the other
So
direction.
bikes will stay the same direction as cars are going in the street.
Oh, that will be nice.
Yep.
And maybe runners too. So if
Well-
you're just walking, it won't be
We're hoping that runners will stay to the sidewalk, but I guess I won't be terribly surprised if we see some in the bike lane too.
one side. Yeah, they tend to move on to those.
Yeah.
Yeah, even though, well, actually around some of the lakes, I think the bike one is bike and joggers, and then the other one is just for pedestrians walking.
Yeah.
Some of those
So
lakes.
I think the one important thing really to think about 66 is we've got a lot of different little segments of bike lanes in Richfield so far. We've got Portland Avenue to the south. We've got Lyndale from 64th to the north. We've got a lot of little segments as opportunities have presented themselves. So what's great about 66 is that we're finally getting the central spine that really starts to connect them all and starts to really build more of a network and not just individual little segments.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned Portland is, and then I think Nicollet is also going
Yep.
to be redone. And I assume that's going to be the complete street with the 2 lanes of traffic and the center turn. And that will also have bike lanes and stuff too on that one?
That's the plan, you know, and the hope.
And the hope. So that would be great. Well, this is all exciting. I mean, somebody said, I know there were a lot of complaints about taking the homes on the south side of the, between 35 and Penn, but
That wasn't for the bike facility.
no.
That was necessary. But let me try this again. That was necessary because of the safety aspects
Yeah.
of the left-hand turns
Yeah.
that people were making on that roadway. So without the removal of those homes, the high accident percentage in that portion of 66th Street wouldn't have been solved. So the city, as part of their roadway reconstruction, made the determination that safety was one of the primary aspects that had to be considered, and so that they were violating the principle of that if they didn't widen the road enough to allow those left-hand turns in the left-hand turn lane, and that required that some of those homes had to be removed.
And also, I mean, to be fair too, the county wanted a place to put the snow and the city didn't want it dumped on the sidewalk, and the boulevard will be there too.
Yeah, so there have been real maintenance issues with the current street. Anybody who's tried to walk, well, in any season on that street knows the sidewalks are sunken. In the winter, they get snow piled on them. It's not, I can't imagine if you were in a wheelchair using a walker trying to walk on those sidewalks. And it will really resolve those issues to have the more space that we're going to have.
Yeah, that's true. I hadn't thought about that. The new format allows for much more handicap accessibility. I mean, it's wide enough for wheelchairs to
Yep.
go down and for people to get around that way.
The complete street concept is one that you know, it gives some reverence to the pedestrian.
Yes.
And currently on our streets in Richfield, you know, the sidewalk is right next to the busy roads, and it's not very pleasant, and you know, some people consider it unsafe, and you know, seasonally it's sometimes impassable.
And that's why pedestrians are being treated well. And you know, that kind of goes together. If you've got a strong bicycle group, it seems like they pay attention, and maybe the pedestrians aren't as strong there, but they seem to benefit from your advocacy.
But we're all pedestrians.
That's true. We walk.
Yeah.
Or we should be walking more, I guess. The doctors and the healthcare really advocate it. So, oh, great. Future. What does the future hold for bicycling? I mean, move ahead 30 years. What do you think we will see?
Well, I'm certainly hopeful that we'll start to see a lot more bicycling that just fits into transit, into that last mile that you talked about being able to bike to your transit stop and then take the bus where you want to go. I'm hopeful that we live in an area that's relatively sprawled out. The Minneapolis area in general is sprawled out. We're not going to see a 90% bicycle share, but I think it's very realistic that we could see people going within their own community, going a lot of short trips, and a significant percentage of those people. And the reality is, if we're able to get 20% bike share, and that's not going to happen tomorrow. That's a long, ambitious goal. But 20% bike share would make a huge difference to the health of the community. I mean, make a huge difference to traffic congestion for people who are going to continue to drive. And I think it would just make it a more livable, attractive place to live.
There's a real paradox in that young parents are concerned about their kids walking or biking to school, and so they drive them. So they drive them, there's more traffic on the road,
Yeah.
and they create the problem that they're looking to avoid. So the idea of education to students so that they can be more comfortable biking, so their parents will feel more comfortable allowing them to bike or walk is going to play a big role. As more and more people bike, then the motorists, many of which are also bikers, are more kind to
That's
the
true.
bicyclists.
Yeah.
As more and more people bike, actually the number of accidents per the number of bicyclists is going down because with more bicyclists, drivers are more aware of bicyclists on the road and are maybe more careful. And so the prognosis for the future is positive. So that we encourage folks like you to get out there and bike. And what's happening too, because biking is becoming a viable transportation mode, and most of our trips are short distances, the 2 or 3 miles, where you could easily do it in a bike without climbing in your car and adding to the traffic woes. For those folks that are concerned about their ability to pedal, the electric assist bikes are going to be more of a factor. And this opens up biking to a greater portion of our population.
Tell me all about that. Tell me, what is an electric assist bike? I mean, I know what an electric assist car is, but tell me what, I have not heard of that.
So it would be a bike that has a large battery attached to it in some way that is allowed to assist you up to 20 miles an hour. So you do have to be pedaling the bike. It's not just turning your bike into a moped, but it really helps level out, especially for people who have joint issues or people who just want to go faster. Going up hills, that can be a real barrier for people to manage. So they continue to basically pedal with their same level of output, and then the electricity kicks on and helps you a little bit to give you a boost.
So there's probably computerized something or other that can tell when you need the extra oomph and triggers the battery, or do you do that manually?
I'm actually...
They have a throttle.
Yeah.
Oh, they have a throttle.
Yeah, so that you can ask for help
Yes.
when you need it. But it won't operate unless you're pedaling some.
Yep.
Okay, so you don't get a complete, like you say, kind of...
It's assist.
I've heard it compared, people, when you're bicycling, you've got a headwind, which is when the wind's blowing at you, or a tailwind, and they say it's just like constantly having a tailwind to have that electric boost.
Oh, wow. That is something. Is that being sold in bike stores now?
Yeah, right now it's still kind of pricey, but if you want to commit to it, and there are some cheaper options coming on, like there's a wheel add-on where you just replace the rear wheel of your bike, and that has all the components built into the wheel.
Oh, so you don't have to get a brand new bike.
Yeah, exactly.
Having worked at the U, it was always a big problem, and that was people stealing bikes. And I know parents, they buy an expensive bike for their kid, and then 3 weeks later, the kid forgets to lock it, it's gone. What can be done about that? I know there's licensing that helps if the bike is recovered.
There are programs that provide bikes to all kids. During the holiday times, you might be familiar with the Free Bikes for Kids program, where bikes that are underused are refurbished and given to people. If everybody has a bike, you don't have to steal one.
You're right about that. Seems like they sometimes don't even go very far.
Yeah, that's a good point. Of course, in the direct theft issue, I think it goes back to one of the things you first mentioned, or maybe before the show about bike racks at businesses. Having high quality bike racks helps a lot, and having appropriate locks and people trained how to use them. Some people go to the hardware store and they get their length of chain and their padlock, and it's so easy for a thief to just snip that and be gone with the bike. And whereas newer ones will have those heavy U-lock shackles, so having racks that work with it and having bicyclists trained in how to use it makes it much harder for somebody who wants to steal that bike to do so.
So the U-lock is still the way to go for locking bikes.
U-lock is still by far the most secure.
And it just people have to use them properly and
Yep.
knowing where to. I know, working in some of the buildings at the U, you'd see sometimes you'd see the whole bike inside. And, you know, it was against the university code to take a bicycle up in the elevator. On other times, you know, they would literally remove the wheel, one of the wheels. And that was the way of trying to prevent theft.
Well, and I think what Dave mentioned also, the bike corrals, like the 38th Street one, are great to take that a level further, to have it weather sheltered and to have the sort of perimeter secured that you have to authenticate yourself to get into that area. It's another way of taking that up a notch. Some communities require, for example, in apartment buildings, that they build those into the apartment building, so you've got a secure place to store it inside there. So that's sort of the next level, especially when it's going to be there for a longer period, like overnight or for a whole business day.
Okay. And for many people, weather, even our winters, aren't really a deterrent to biking, either recreationally or commuting. Is that becoming more and more? Or,
It is. One of the factors that has enhanced that is the technology in clothing. So that there is clothing that you can wear that'll keep you comfortable no matter what the conditions. The other thing that's been a big factor is these fat tire bikes that get more traction in the snow. And then for a long time, if you wanted to, you could get studded tires for your bike, so that in that manner you weren't you were less likely to slip if it was icy, and got better traction. Again, we're a hardy state.
Scandinavian.
And to the credit of Minnesota, last winter the World Winter Biking Congress was here, where individuals from a number of northern hemisphere cities, including Norway and Sweden and Finland and Canada, came here to learn some of the things that we do. We could learn some of the things that they do. The idea behind that is that to make winter biking normal. Minneapolis has a program where some of the bike routes are plowed even before the streets are plowed.
Oh, really?
Richfield's, to their credit, plows all the sidewalks and the bike trails in the community. So winter isn't the deterrent it once was.
And so I'm sure, too, that the bicycle advocates in Richfield are going to be watching very closely, so that after 66 is constructed, that they're going to be watching to make sure those asphalt.
Yeah, and I got to really give credit to Richfield Public Works. Chris Link has already been sort of in touch with us to talk about how they plan to do that. And because, you know, right now, Richfield had one type of vehicle that used for all the sidewalks. It cuts a 6-foot path, and that's great for 6-foot sidewalks, but it doesn't work so well for those wider bike facilities. So yeah, they're actually planning to basically purchase new equipment after the 66 is done to be able to really do that properly. Well, they'll do a first round with a little plow, and then a second round with one of those sweepers to actually dust off all the remnant snow.
Oh, okay.
So that'll be better for bicyclists, and like we talked about before, better for wheelchair users and other pedestrians.
Will they actually be putting kind of salt or sand? I know they found
I think the intention is not to do salt right now, in part just because of the expense and the environmental issues, and in part just because it's sort of a mixed blessing for bikes that it's not very good for the bikes either to get a lot of salt.
Okay, I was wondering about that.
Yeah.
If it, you know, especially on where the bikes are on streets that are salted and sanded and whatnot, does that affect the bikes? And I can imagine getting into the little mechanisms, the gears, I guess is what I'm saying.
Winter is unquestionably tough on bikes, and it's tougher on the riders. Minneapolis does use chemicals on some of their bike routes.
Okay.
Because you know it's better to have the caustic problem than the ice.
Yeah, and it's also better, especially if the bike's with the cars, not to have somebody sliding on the ice and ending up in the path of a motorist. So, okay, we're running out of time, but we got a couple of minutes left. Anything else that we haven't covered that you would like to say about bicycling in general, bicycling in Richfield, future, whatever?
It's my hope in sitting here for this hour that we convince the moderator and the technicians that you know even they can be bicyclists.
Well, I'm very glad, and maybe the audience needs to know that those of us that grew up in the country with plain bikes, we went up all the big hills without any kind of gears or anything, and then we used our feet for the braking system. I found out that they make bikes for us, those of us that remember those days. And helmets are such a key piece. Anything about what helmet to buy, or are all pretty much all bike helmets is safe?
In terms of safety, they all pretty much meet the same standard. The question and the price difference between a $20 helmet and a $200 helmet is mostly sort of comfort and aerodynamic factors. The number one thing I think I would say about helmets people don't know is if it hits the ground even once, you need to replace it. A lot of times people think, well, it's not cracked in two, so I don't need a new one. But really, they're only designed for a single impact.
Impact, okay.
Yeah.
And they do save lives. I mean, there's no, I see bicyclists without helmets on and I shake my head.
Yeah, and of course, it's not a requirement in Minnesota to wear a helmet. There are certainly a lot of people who for whatever reason, aren't able to do so, but it is safer to ride with a helmet, and we do recommend that.
Okay. And anything else, Dave, other than telling me to ride a bike?
No, can we get that commitment?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I plan to go find, I'm not doing as much daycare for grandchildren this year, so I will have more fun. So I have to go find a bike shop. I probably can't say names, but I will find a bike shop that has one for me. I think I can handle gears. It's the braking. I want to make sure I'm doing properly and not messing up. But yes, and I think, we've got a beautiful outdoors, and on a day like today, what can be better, right?
Yeah. Indeed.
Yeah. Okay, well, it is time for me to close off here. So again, I thank both of you for being on the show with me, and hopefully we convinced that, yes, the future is good. It is safe to bike. Motorists better mind their P's and Q's and review some of the rules and regulations. But people really need to get out there into our great outdoors, and biking is a very good way to do it. So Dave Gepner and Sean O'Leary, thanks very much. I'm glad that you were on the show. And to my visitors, or watchers, viewers, thank you for watching Inside the Issues. Good night.